People are asking me about gaps in employments, and there's many different types of ways that you could have this gap. You might be currently in a gap, or you might have had gaps throughout. I want to go through kind of 3-4 different facets of this. So let's talk about the gaps in employment. I'm getting this one a lot. Can you see I don't do anything small? Even my coffee cup's bigger in my head. Okay, so I know some of you are you are in a gap, or you are a stay-at-home parent returning to the workforce. Some of you have elderly parents you've been caring for. Some of you are just have been out of work for an extended period of time, and you've been searching. Some of you've been consulting. Some of you've been doing projects. You got all kinds of stuff. So I want to try to, and I'm not going to be able to go through every single permutation and combination of this, but I'm going to hit a lot of them. And that's what we got the Q&A for. But now, if you are in a gap at the moment, or meaning, you were a stay-at-home parent, you're re-entering the workforce, whatever reason, there are 6 things that I recommend that you do to kind of, I don't want to say supercharge, basically really give yourself a leg up in returning. And I'm going to go through these very quickly, but I want you to have this list so it can stimulate your thinking. The first one being, you got to network. So most of you have access to either the Job Search Bootcamp program or my Ultimate Career course, or I've got even some free live office hours videos where I talk about this. Session 3 of the bootcamp, we go into this heavy. In the Ultimate Career course, there's videos that go into this heavy. And I even have a live office hours session out there about why your job search is taking so long, where I talk about networking. And I have a video out that's public business networking, how to build professional relationships. But really take advantage of your network. And that's certainly an obvious one. But as we get into some of these less obvious ones, there's the training aspect. One of the things that we're going to talk about when we get really prescriptive here in a bit about what you have to do in your interviews and in your cover letters and even on your resume is employers always want explanations. Now, if you are training could be taking classes. Some of you've we had a number of paralegals some people have gone to nursing school. We get a lot of this. Some of you are just taking certifications. We've got one guy, I don't know if he's in here. Daniel is taking the Salesforce administrator certification. So things like that are absolutely fantastic if you're currently in a gap. Another thing is, and I always like this one, but volunteering. So anything that you can do that volunteers you in the direction of where you want to go. So all volunteering is good for the soul. All of it is. Anytime you expend your time, which is your most valuable asset, and your time and attention is the best thing you could ever give anybody. But if you are trying to expend your time wisely from a volunteer standpoint, you want to make sure that you are doing something in alignment with where you want to go. If you're in the arts, volunteer in a museum. I don't care if you're the hostess or the coat checker or whatever, but there are things that you can do, and you would be amazed at how many, even me, for example, how many inquiries that I got from kids in college or recent college graduates that just wanted to intern with me in Mile Walk to get some experience. And I was glad to do that, and I paid them a little bit where I could or treated them to other things. But that's a really good way to get something on your resume. And by the way, if you are volunteering and you are actually working, you don't have to say that it was an unpaid. I mean, if you were volunteering, you were getting the work experience, that's, to me, is as good as working there. So that's something that you want to think of. Another thing that you should not be afraid of, it's never been easier than ever to open up some type of small business. That could be consulting, it could be projects, it could be organizing people's closets. I don't care what it is, don't be afraid to take a part-time job. So one of the things that I always stress is if there's a part, whether it's part-time volunteering, part-time pay, whatever it might be, but try to do something where you're gaining either the skills or the capabilities that you need for what you are doing. And the other one, and I can't get over, I don't get this question a lot, and I can't get over why not, but there are a lot of wonderful professionals out there who do job shares. We actually, Kara and I used to work with a couple of awesome ladies, super smart, program managers, project managers, and business analysts. That was their kind of area of expertise. They actually split a job 20 hours a week at a technology company, which was really kind of cool. So I think, these are things that you might even, to kind of open up your possibilities to keep yourself engaged, because if you're currently in a gap, you want to make sure that you are staying sharp. Now, let's talk about, okay, so that was kind of leading up and giving yourself a better runway or starting to rev up the engine so you could take off. But those are kind of 6 or so things that I would recommend that you look at if you are in a situation where, you're a stay-at-home parent, you're working to re-enter the workforce, or you're in between jobs, and there are things that you can do from a consulting standpoint or whatever. But I would try to look at those and think creatively about how to stay engaged. Because when we get to the part of the talk about how you got to explain the stuff, that stuff's going to be paramount. Now, if you've had a gap in your past, what's done is done. I wouldn't make a big deal out of that. But for folks who are going through that right now, I would keep that in mind. Let's talk about some stuff that I absolutely would not do. And these are pretty strong recommendations if you know what I mean. Number 1, do not, under any circumstance, ever put a functional resume together. That is code for when recruiters, I'm not kidding you, that is code for I'm hiding something. Code for I'm hiding something. Most of them do not want to see those. I've talked about this at length. I've talked about it in the resume course. I've talked about it in our monthly coaching. I've talked about it in my public stuff. I've talked about it in my public recorded videos, in my live office hours, everywhere you can find me. I am telling you, do not put a functional resume together. They give recruiters headaches. They want to know where you are now. If you are not working, that's okay. I will give you the formula for how to address that. But don't, whatever you do, use a functional resume. They're terrible. Don't put up top non-work stuff. So if you are volunteering and it's truly volunteering and you're doing it in the PTO, or you're helping, feed my starving children, or you're doing whatever, do not make that appear as though it is your current job. Unless it is actually a job and you're volunteering because you're not getting paid, that's okay. But don't put stuff up there. And if you're stay-at-home dad or stay-at-home mom, don't put stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad up at the top. Don't do that on the resume. The resume is not, you do not need to explain it there. So speaking of, I do not want you to explain it in your resume. It is what it is. If the last time you worked was 2011, then the last time you worked was 2011. Just leave it there. Just leave it there. But there are some things that you can do on your resume. Actually, I did this yesterday with somebody. I don't know if she's here, but I did her resume review. Actually, I'd be interested to see. I'm just glancing. I don't think she's here. Oh, wait, she is here. Debbie's here. Okay. But I did a resume review yesterday, and it looked pretty good. So Debbie, it looked pretty good. And she had a gap, and she's returning to work after a layoff, and she's done some really good things. And let's talk about how you might be able to address that in the resume. So the one thing that you do have to realize is you need a written explanation. So you are going in some way, shape, or form, more or less, let's call it 90% of the time. I mean, except for the situation where you meet somebody or you know somebody who walks you in to an interview and they say to their partners or their coworkers or the HR person or whoever, hey, Jane Smith is awesome. She hasn't worked in the last 5 years. She's coming back because she had her first 2 kids. I know her well. Interview her. And they do. Obviously, there's not a lot of explaining you need to do at that moment, but you are, for the most part, most of you going to have to explain this in the written form. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So I'm talking about in your emails, in your cover letters, those kinds of things. It's okay to say, I am returning to the workforce after an 11-year layoff. I was a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, or took care of my elderly parents, which required 2 years of, me moving to a different city or whatever. It's okay. Just explain it. It's life. It happens. I know a lot of you feel as though you're in a unique situation. This stuff happens a lot. Recruiters are you have to think about what recruiters see. They see lots of resumes and inquiries on a daily basis. They see lots of people coming off these types of issues and that are getting themselves back on track. So you want to make sure that you just simply clarify it. This is what the situation was. I was stay-at-home mom for 5 years, and I'm going back, and I polished up my degree and whatever. So you need some kind of written explanation. The next thing that you need to do in your resume. So if you got a gap in your resume, whether it's a current gap or whether it's a gap somewhere else, if it's a current gap, it's a little tougher. But what I always recommend is, and we talk about this a lot, you have a career profile, you have a career highlights section, and then you have your work history. That's for most of you. Most of you will go that route. You can pull forward up to the top whatever you want to put the accent on. So, in Debbie's case, she's done a lot of loan-related work, escrow officers, other things of that nature. While she did that earlier in her career, she did a lot of it for a number of years. So we just pulled that all forward to the top and highlighted that in the career profile, in highlights or whatever. That is important. You can pull that forward. The other thing that you can do is, and I know some of you have gone back to school, or if you're getting heavy-duty certifications, you can pull all that up. So there's nothing wrong if you are returning to the workforce or making a career change by pulling your education toward the top. This is the one exception that I would say it's okay to keep move the education from the bottom to the top, because you want to highlight that. We had the last 2 months, we had like a half a dozen paralegals who were either making switch at legal secretaries or legal administrators to paralegal, or they were coming back from a layoff and had gone to paralegal school or whatever. You can move that education up to the top. I still would recommend having your career profile up top. And if you are getting certifications, then even in the profile, you can put, about to complete certification on, going to have this certification by, recently completed certification of, and so on. All of that stuff is cool. So remember, the terms that I use are controlling the narrative. You are making me as a reviewer see what you want me to see, regardless of what has happened to you most recently. It's the one kind of fair shot that you get to adjust the way that I look at your resume. So where a functional resume is code for lying, putting it in the highlights in the career profile is not. So I would do that. I would take advantage of that. And then the other thing is, in the interview, I always get asked, well, how do I explain that? Just explain it. I was a stay-at-home mom, or I was taking care of my elderly parents, or I left my company a year and a half ago and I've been consulting ever since. And I've been working on these ventures and all that good stuff. Whatever it is, just say it. And don't make a big deal out of it. If you make a big deal out of it, they're going to make a big deal out of it. And in most cases, people will understand that. What most of them will be interested, I know I certainly am, when I'm faced with situations where people are in those predicaments, I want to get to the goods. Okay, if you say that, I will take it at face value. I really will. I mean that, because I have more faith in my ability, in my training, in my experience to be able to elicit the information that I want to know about you to determine if you're going to be a good fit for my company and for this role. Spending more time talking about that is going to give me a better indication, rather than me spending a lot of time trying to figure out what you did for the last 18 months. So keep that in mind. Most skilled recruiters will do that. So in an interview, just explain what it is. If they say, what have you been doing for the last year, just explain it, 5 years, whatever it is. So don't, it's not as big a deal as you think. I mean, if you are in an interview, they think pretty highly of you, at least on paper anyway, even if you haven't been working. You have to remember that, right? What do I always say? If you're in the interview, you're qualified. That's what the employer is saying. Otherwise, they're not going to take the time to talk to you. So I hope that helps.